What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be comparing my LCD-X's versus the newer Manny Marroquin MM-500s, both by Audeze. Now, I've had my LCD-X's for a long time. I love these headphones. I actually had them updated recently, so they're the 2021 model. They did some tweaks to make them a bit different. And I've used these quite a bit for doing some mixing and mostly quality checking and stuff like that. But I did want to check out the Manny Marroquins because there's been a lot of hype about those headphones. So in today's video, we're going to be checking out the difference between the two headphones and answer the question which I had, which headphone is better? Let's go. Now first, let's talk about the differences between the two headphones. The LCD-X is definitely a beefier headphone. It weighs about 200 grams more, and you can tell just by looking at the two. The Manny headphone gets its build from the more expensive LCD-X model, and it just feels better on the head. Now, the one thing is the Manny does clamp a bit on your head, and for those of us with big domes, that could be a problem. But I didn't notice it after wearing it for a bit of time, although I do notice the LCD-X feels a bit more relaxed when it's on my head, although it is heavier, which I'm not a big fan of. Now, the next big difference between the two is the frequency response. I borrowed this graph from headphones.com, and you can see that there's definitely a much bigger mid-range bump in the Manny Marroquin headphones. The other thing you notice is there's a big dip on both the headphones around 9 to 10K. But then on the LCD-X's, they have a huge bump right after that where the Manny stay flat throughout. And this is where I think we start having to ask the question, which headphone is better? As you can see from the graph, the low end all the way up to 2K is pretty much the same between the two headphones. And that was the experience I had when listening. I felt both had great punch, both had great low end extension. I could hear everything that I could hear on my key threes, which go down to 20 hertz as well. And obviously the mid-range is where you really start hearing the differences. I felt that the Manny headphones were a little bit more in my face. Like if you were on speakers, they'd be closer, where my LCD-X's are a bit further away. And I think that has a lot to do with both the mid-range being way more forward, and also I think the clamp on the head. Like the LCD-X's are a little bit wider, and when I pushed them in, I started to get a little bit of the same sound as the Manny's. And I don't know if that's because the Manny's clamp harder or not, but I did notice a difference when you push or pull each headphone. And depending on what kind of sound you like, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I actually like the mid-range bump, although I wish it was just a little bit less. Sometimes on certain songs, it felt just a little too forward, and I wondered if I did a mix on it, would the mix translate to being a little bit dull afterwards because I wasn't pushing the mid-range enough. The next part of the frequency band to discuss is the high end. And as you can see, there is that big bump from the LCD-X's where the Manny's are lower there. And in my experience, translating the LCD-X's to my key threes, they sounded more on par, where the Manny's, I felt like the high end was a bit dull and I couldn't hear it as well as I could hear it on the speakers or the LCD-X's. Now, do keep in mind the key threes are somewhat bright sometimes, and I'm used to that. But for translation purposes, there's times when I was listening to hi-hats or tambourines on the LCD-X's, I can hear them clearly, and when I put them on the speakers, it sounded the same. On the Manny's, I felt like the hi-hats and tambourines were kind of further back. And I'm afraid if I was mixing on them, if I didn't know that, I would actually make a much brighter mix. So then in that case, it's a bit weird because your mid-range is going to be pulled down because of the bump in the mid-range, but it's going to be brighter on the high end. And I'm sure you could get used to that just like any headphone. I've gotten used to using the LCD-X's, knowing that they're a little bit relaxed sometimes, where the Manny's might be a good thing where they're a little bit more forward. So, there's pluses and minuses to either side. As far as stereo width goes, I still like my LCD-X's. They're a little bit, like I said, a little more comfortable and loose, which, the Manny's are a bit more tight and in your face, but the LCD-X's, it felt a little bit wider. And that could be, a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you're looking for. But I did prefer the LCD-X's to the Manny's when it came to stereo width feel of the headphones. The last question is, which one would you buy? And you would think from my review here that I would say the LCD-X's, no doubt. But I think I'm a bit partial because I've been using the LCD-X's for so long. And I really do like the comfort and the mid-forwardness of the Manny's. And I think you could either EQ some more high-end if you needed it, or just get used to them overall. So if I was going to buy a new headphone today, I would buy the Manny's. I think they feel better on the head. You could wear them longer. They're lighter, which is a huge huge thing when you're, wearing headphones for a long time. And the mid bump is better, I think, than the X's. The X's can be a bit too relaxed, where I think, the Manny's might be better for actually mixing and mastering. And it's just a high-end thing you'd have to get around and figure out, if you need more by EQing it, or if you just get used to the sound and realize that you don't want to push the high frequencies as much. On the other hand, if you're thinking of upgrading from the LCD-X's to the Manny's, I don't think there's a need. The LCD-X's are a fantastic headphone, and if you're used to using them, the Manny's might throw you off for a bit. And I just don't think there's that big a difference to have to upgrade unless you really need that mid-forwardness and you think the LCD-X's are a bit too high. So that's it for this review. Let me know what you guys think. Which headphones are your favorites in the comments below. If you do need your songs mixed or mastered, I'll do them with speakers. Hit me up at mixandmastermysong.com. You can also find my courses and presets there too. Talk to you soon.